Okay, hello everyone. So this is going to be the first book review slash series review because this is going to be an in-depth single book. It's mostly going to be talking about an entire series. If I look over there, that's because I wrote little notes down so I wouldn't forget what I'm talking about and I don't get too rambly. So, as I said, it's going to be a review slash type of talking about what the series is about. So if you're looking into the series, then you can kind of figure out what's going on. So the first I'm going to be talking about is Terry Brooks and his Shannara series. Now, there is two different series that he kind of combined into one, and I'll talk about what exactly those books were. But, so for the most part, that I'm going to be talking about the whole Shannara world and how he did bridge one different series completely with his Shannara world and made them together, which was kind of a cool idea. So, the first thing I want to talk about Terry Brooks is that if you do start reading him, he's fantastic for a couple of reasons, but one of the cool reasons is he kind of puts out a book almost in every year. Sometimes there was one year where he had 2 books out in the same year, which was kind of awesome. So you didn't have to wait very long to finish up his current series that he was working on. But yeah, he pumps out a book like almost every single year, and he's constantly updating his website with like Q&A and like all that stuff. He's very, very good about making sure that content keeps on getting to his readers, which is very nice because how else are we going to keep on knowing what he's going on with his world if he doesn't communicate with us? And he does it very well, I think, and like I said, he gets out a book a year, so if you really enjoy reading and you do end up liking him, that is a huge plus because you're not going to have to wait years and years and years to finish a series because he's really on top of his writing. Now the other thing that I think is really good about Terry Brooks is his writing style is very easy to read. You can get right into it with no problem. It's not the most in-depth, fantastical, hardcore writing like some authors and novels and things like that are. Almost everyone can pick up one of his books and can be completely fine with the way he writes and be able to understand it and the way he describes it. It's very, I don't know if the word I'm looking for is concise, maybe? It's straightforward. He gets the point across. The descriptions are fantastic. You know what he's talking about, where they're doing, what the action is. And so for that, again, it's very easy to get into his writing, and that is a huge plus, because it's not something that you're going to be like, ugh, you're actually going to get into it and be like, oh man, tore through this, couple 100-page book over a weekend. Now what do I have to do? Only wait a year, because his next book's coming out then, because he's that fast. So yeah, as I said at the beginning, he connected 2 series into one. So one of his series, Terry Brooks, Running with the Demon, it's called the Word and Void series, and it's modern day world, and it's about these people called the Knights who fight demons, basically. Of a nighttime, they dream about the end of the world after demons have destroyed it, and during the day, they have to use the clues they learned of a nighttime in their dreams, which are kind of prophetic, to stop them. His first book is really cool because it takes place over basically like a week. And it's really neat. It introduces the characters and stuff like that, and it takes place over a very short time period, which is, I think, a kind of cool concept. But yeah, they're really cool. The characters are nice. It's a 3-book series that follows one of these guys named John Ross, and he's the knight of the Word. And first one's, you get to learn about how he became a knight and why, and what they do, and they start fighting the demons and things like that. Now what's cool about this series is that he combined this series with his Shannara series. Spoiler alert, I'm going to ruin some things for you, so if you don't want to know too much, I'll try not to go too big in details. I mean, you do learn about this pretty early on, about why things are this way, but basically the demons end up influencing humanity to destroy it. And after it's destroyed, from present day, it gets destroyed, and then after that, that's when his fantasy series takes over. So it's kind of like a post-apocalyptic world fantasy setting, not zombies and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. So in these ones, it's just straight up this guy named John Ross, who's a knight of the Word, basically a force for good, fighting evil, going from place to place, fighting it and stuff like that. And it has a couple of recurring characters. But yeah, so it's a really interesting series. Sorry, my nose is itchy. Yeah, so that was pretty cool. So like I said, it combines this series with his fantasy series, and I mean, in the first book, you find out, basically, it doesn't completely right out say it, but you pretty much get the idea that his Shannara world is our world, that these demons had a hand in destroying our world, and, you know, all technology got wiped out, and then magic came back instead of science, and, you know, there's all these fantastical creatures and magic, and, you know, it goes back to a medieval setting. Which is kind of cool because, sorry, my nose is so itchy. It's going to ruin the video, but it's my first one, so, anyways. It's really cool because it goes, you get this, I mean, post-apocalyptic worlds are quite popular right now, zombies are pretty popular right now, but his spin on it is kind of cool because it's not, you know, the world gets destroyed, but then instead of, like, you know, road warrior, you know, shotguns and things like that, it's completely different. It's back to swords, it's back to bows, and then a resurgence of magic, which is, you know, fantastic. You know, I always get a little giddy because the idea is kind of cool, and it's, you know, evokes that, you know, imagination of the kid in you. Like, you know, you're walking down the street, you know, but the skyscrapers are all gone, and instead of that, it's an open field, and, you know, nights and things like that. So I think that's pretty cool. Another big spoiler for this one, I might say, is his fantasy races are really cool. He uses elves and dwarves and trolls, but it goes on to explain that they're not all fairy creatures. You know, they're actually descendants of humans. When the bombs fell, because that's how the demons ended up destroying the world, it was a lot of nuclear warfare, his races, a lot of them are formed because of that. So people who took refuge underground from the apocalypse, you know, got shorter and they got used to being underground, and then when they came back out, the regular humans who weren't changed much called them dwarves. And, you know, people that hid in the mountains, you know, their skin got all scruffy and they got all big and strong to try to deal with the things, and they became trolls. The exception to that is that the elves, people think that they were people at first that got mutated, but it turns out they actually were elves. So on top of having the real world and the fantasy world, it starts off with the history as the world being, you know, what you consider fairy. You know, elves, dwarves, things like that, all running around. And then the emergence of man, and magic disappears and becomes science. And then the demons destroy us with their own science, and it goes back to magic. And these elves, who are in hiding for that whole science era, come back into the real world. Not the real world, but to the general population and kind of influence it again. So that's a very unique thing. So it's not just straight elves and dwarves or mythological creatures. There's actually a unique spin on a lot of them, of why they are what they are. Yeah, so the cool thing is also that between the two books, between the two series, there's a whole bunch of bridge novels, which take place after the bombs fall, and then, you know, they're trying to find their way to safety, and you're starting to meet some of their races after they've been mutated, and it is our land. I mean, he hasn't come out completely 100% and said it, but some of the books take place on the east coast of the United States of America. So it's pretty clear that his four lands, which is what his land of Shannara is called, it's based on that area. There's actually books where, you know, they're driving through, and I'm pretty sure it's Seattle. I'm pretty sure. Sorry if I'm wrong on that, but yeah. So that was cool. Now on to some of the characters. There's this guy in there, I think his name's, how do you pronounce it, Alanon? It's, he's the Gandalf, I'll say, quotation marks. He's, you know, he's the guy who instigates it. He's the wizard, mage, druid, what they're called in this series, who starts the whole quest off. And he's awesome. One, even in the prequel novel, where you get to learn a little bit about him when he's a boy, you still have no idea who he is, where he came from. He's like a completely different person looking than most people. His magic is awesome. There's a point where he fights off against a couple different guys, and he's like flying on the back of this thing, fighting demons, and, you know, he's a badass. The also cool thing is that he's dedicated to his cause. You know, there's a couple points in the books where people are pissed at him because he lies to them. He manipulates them for the greater good, but he does still lie to them. He tells them half-truths, he hides things so that they don't really know what's going on. And I think that's cool. It's a character that you like because he's a awesome, powerful, cool guy, you know, flinging fireballs out. He's a wizard, and that's awesome. And at the same time, you're like, oh, he's a kind of a jerk because he's hiding all this information from the main characters, which they could have used. But at the same time, it was important for him to hide that information. So I think, I'll say it, all the Lord of the Rings fans, Alanon, way cooler than Gandalf. Way cooler. Sorry, but he is. There's this one point in the main series, in his first book that he wrote, called The Sword of Truth, is what they're looking for. It's kind of like a quest that they have to go on to find this thing, and the way that they kill the bad guy at the end, spoiler, is basically exactly what the sword says, the Sword of Truth. I don't want to ruin it too much, because it's an overview, but the actual name of the sword itself is a lot of information of how they actually kill him, and it's a very unique idea to kill the bad guy, and I loved it. It was awesome. Maybe when I go in, I think I'll do a more in-depth explanation when I actually go back and reread that book. For this, I think it should be just more of an overview, so hopefully not too many spoilers. But so a lot of people say that he ripped off Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings. He wrote his book, his first one, around the time when it was very popular, and there was a lot of pressure to make the same sort of novels because that was what was selling in the fantasy world. So his beginning of the series, the first book, does very much start off like Lord of the Rings, you know, the small person has to go on a quest to find, this artifact to kill the big baddie, and there's a dwarves and elves joining them, and, there's a meeting of all the different races to try to stop the bad guys, and there's war looming and stuff like that, but it differs quite quickly. That, I don't know, people say it's like complete ripoff, and I personally don't agree. Yes, it's a quest story, but, quest stories were around long before Tolkien wrote his. It's just his is the most popular fantasy one that was around that influenced a lot of people. So it does quickly become different very fast. His whole series, and then especially when he combines it, it's very different. So if you do like Tolkien, you will find some things close to it that you'll enjoy. And if you didn't, it's a quest novel, so it's still fantasy, and it's very different from Lord of the Rings. Sorry. What was the last thing I wanted to do? His cool thing is that his fantasy novels, they're filled with magic, and each book introduces a lot of new magic aspects, and he has a whole world ready to be explored with different magical artifacts that keep popping up, and basically his magic it's not very well explained. Magic is just magic, so if you're looking for hard rules that are followed, you're not really going to find them, but at the same time that's kind of nice, because his tone of the novels are more fantastical and imaginative, not really hard and gritty. So the idea that, any new magical thing can pop up is a neat idea, and it's very cool. There is one thing that I'll have to say, though, is that there is this one thing that he keeps on reusing a little bit. He used it once in his second book, which is now going to be made into a television show, too, at this point, so hopefully that turns out really cool, called the Elk-Cries. Basically, it's a tree that, spoiler, forms a magical barrier and stops demons from escaping their prison to destroy their real world. And he uses that in his books quite a bit later on. He uses it a couple times, which is the one thing that is kind of a little disappointing. He starts off with his first book in a very small area, and the whole world around it is unexplored, and each time they go out they explore a little bit more and more and more and more and more, until the later on books it's kind of all explored, and he hasn't gone further. He just keeps on getting them to go in the same area. So that's the one thing that I'm a little disappointed in him with, is that he's created this really cool world with all these strange things and magic happening, but he's kept it to a very small, not small, but relatively small geographical area, because there is literally the entire world to go through, but they keep on going to areas they're fairly close by. There's not much huge population, so there's a lot of wild lands and things like that, but then in his later books he does kind of return to a couple areas that they've already been, so the story's new, but it's still a little disappointing. So I will say that about him. that I wish, he has this whole world to explore, but he doesn't keep on expanding. I don't know if it's just because he's comfortable, that's not the story he wants to tell, but would it be nice if they expanded a little bit more to go beyond what we've seen, because there hasn't really been all that much exploration since then. What's neat about his books is, if you take the whole series at a glance, it started off with magic, and then the advent of humans, and then science destroys it, and we go back to magic, and now in his books, it's magic took back over for a little while, but now people are trying to trust science more. And so there's magic is going back down and science is going up. So they're kind of like a little power battle going on right now with all the different characters, which is it's kind of neat. It's an interesting concept. The one thing that's really cool is his people are developing science that the old world never had. So yeah, we had fossil fuels and planes, but now they're having basically airships. They use these crystals to power them, and they kind of fly and they go all over the place, and they've got these like fire weapons that use the sunlight stored in the energy to shoot it out, things like that. So that's really cool. It introduced like, cool ship-to-ship battles, and how they can move how they can move troops really quickly. So that was pretty cool. But that again goes back to the point where I said it would be nice if they explored a little bit more, because now they have these airships, they can fly all over the place, and they did use a couple books where they did go really far, but they haven't really gone back, which is a little disappointing. So now that they have these airships, it's even quicker to get from point A to point B, so it makes the world feel even smaller, especially since he's not expanding it. But the airship itself is a really cool thing. They got these gnomes, which again, people mutated to be different things. So when they're traveling across the thing, they come up in even smaller ones, and they're like raiders. So instead of being hiding in the forest and attacking people, now they have the capability of flight. So it's very interesting. I do like a lot of his characters in the books. They're very relatable and good. It is a coming-of-age story, because that's the type of book he writes, quests and coming of age, and realizing the power within you and all that stuff. So it's very, very easy to read fantasy that's fantastical. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good overview of the series, and I'll go more in depth. But if you're looking to read Terry Brooks, I would definitely say yes, read him. You're not going to be going in and reading like a hard, gritty novel where people's lives are on the line, and they're in the front line, and it's dirty and despair and things like that, which sometimes people say, oh, Terry Brooks isn't good because he's not like that, which I disagree. It's just like TV. If you don't, if you feel like watching a comedy, you watch a comedy. If you feel like watching an action, you watch an action. So if you feel like reading a hard, epic, super complicated, magical world, yes, Terry Brooks isn't necessarily going to be the best thing for that. But if you feel like reading something that is fantastical, has magic, has adventure, has quests, is going to be an enjoyable read, pick up Terry Brooks. You're not going to be disappointed, because that's what you're looking for. If you're not really sure what you're looking for, give him a try. If you're not too happy with the fantasy elements, try his beginning series, because these have no actual reference to the Shannara series. It's just later on that he made books connecting the two. So if you just want something modern day that has magic in it, pick up these ones, because they're fantastic. And then, if you like them, try picking up the rest of the series. He's gotten a lot better as he goes along. Like with all authors, the first couple of books aren't going to be as good as their others, because they know what works, they know what they can do, and things of that nature. So like I said, you read Terry Brooks because you want escapism. It's fun. I don't know if I'm getting this point across at all. I might be sounding a little weird, but to reiterate, yes, he's got a simple writing style, and sometimes that's what you need. Sometimes you don't want to be all, what was that person that did that race is that person, had that political agenda, but no, they didn't because it's that. Pick up Terry Brooks, because you're going to go into the world with fantasy, reading about fantasy, and you're just going to have a good time. That's basically what it is. So, yes, pick it up, read it. As I said, I'll go in-depth another day with the actual storylines. I hope I didn't do too many spoilers. I tried to make sure I said spoiler if there's anything too much to the books. But it happens. So yeah, so pick up those books, read them. They're fantastic. And like I said, I'll go back and do an actual in-depth review when I go back and reread the series. So this was my first video, and I hope it was enjoyable and not too rambling. I'll have to try to be a little bit more concise with my notes. They were kind of all over the place, so I kind of had to keep looking and things like that. And yes, I probably said a lot too. But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope it was informative. At least 1 or 2 people enjoyed it. I hope. Maybe more. Hopefully more. You should enjoy it. It was fantastic. But yes, so I will come back another day with more books, more series, and like I said in my introduction, I'll try to do other stuff too. So I hope you have a good day, enjoy reading, and I should come up with a cool catchphrase to close it out. I'm like, raw fantasy. But I don't know. Anyways, like I said, have a good day. Thanks, y'all.